Excuse me, I'd like to ask you a few questions.
Hey y'all, Robert Scott Bell here from the Robert Scott Bell Show Garden, actually. Gonna report on something called diabetes. Y'all heard of it? Particularly type 2. I've covered this story many times over the years on my show. It's not new, but if you're new to the program, and how I say, there's so many complications and complexities that are thrown around the word diabetes. I love it when we can make things a little bit simpler. And I've said very often on the air, type 2 diabetes is very simple to reverse. And I stand by that statement. Now, as a homeopath, I used to utilize, and I still do from time to time, these are remedies, single remedies. You see these globules, these little medicated things like iris and lycopodium, the club moss. These are homeopathic remedies that are indicated for pancreatic function, low blood sugar, hypoglycemia, things like that. And I utilized that for many years with great success. Now, years ago, I met my good buddy to be, not a doc, Christopher Barr. And he introduced me to Chromium. All right, if you remember that, this is on page 54, 55 in Unlock the Power to Heal. We wrote about that to give more detailed information, but supporting information so you would know what to do to reverse diabetes. Because as he said, and I agree with him 100%, that type 2 diabetes is really a deficiency of the GTF chromium molecule. Chromium makes up the majority of what is known as the glucose tolerance factor delivery system for sugar into and out of the cells. And what we have is a focus totally on insulin in our medical culture. Insulin is like the trucks that carry the sugar between things, right? Now you can imagine if the Teamsters, who are the dock workers, go on strike, and you have all of this insulin carrying all of this sugar, how is it going to be offloaded? It's not. That's a problem. And the body will go, hey, more insulin, we need more insulin. And of course, that's a problem because you can't offload it. You can't deliver it into the cells, or if it's stored into the fat cells, you can't relinquish it back out and use it for energy when you need it. And it's the chromium primarily. In a whole food state, we're not talking hexavalent chromium, we're talking a whole food form of GTF chromium that is the difference maker in terms of utilizing blood sugar. And that sugar can come from the food, as it must ultimately, but not in the form of refined carbohydrate. So here we have 100% whole food form of chromium. This is what I use, and this is what I've seen reverse type 2 diabetes consistently. And you'll see these little tablets, whole food, all food. They're not pretend food, they're not a synthetic isolate. 100 micrograms right there. Why not 200 micrograms? Why not 400? You can't absorb that much. It would waste the vast majority if you go too high. So we take 100 micrograms. Now, don't try this at home, kids, but you can chew it up like food, or you can swallow it whole because it is food. You don't have to say, oh, I gotta pretend it's food, mix it with food. It is food, so you can take it on an empty stomach. Now, if we come down to the garden here for a moment, you'll see this is soil, obviously, moment of duh, right? Growing my carrots here. But if I was growing sugar cane in the soil, sugar cane is interesting because it mobilizes out of the soil the most amount of chromium you can imagine of any food source on the planet, just about. Why would God create sugar, sweet sugar cane, and put so much chromium in it? Only for man to say, hey, you know what? When we get that sugar cane out, let's rip all the minerals, including the chromium, out and sell it for industry, and we'll give the people the sugar that they want with no chromium and expect that you're going to survive on that. That's why sugar is as dangerous as crack cocaine. It's addictive, it's deadly. Not because it's sugar, but because they've ripped all the minerals out. Now, if it isn't in the soil, it's not going to be in the food. So that's another problem with monocropping and not treating the soil and nourishing it. But in the same way, we have to replenish our soil, our bodies. We have to get the chromium back in. So 100 micrograms 3 times a day, 4 if you're really bad off. And over the course of weeks to months, especially if you're on medication, metformin, glucophage, or other things, or even insulin, you got to monitor this because your needs for those things will diminish greatly until you no longer need them. Now, this is not a story about type 1. That's an autoimmune response, usually to vaccines, but that's another story on another day. But for now, I wanted to let you know about this. We've got links up in the show notes at robertscottbell.com to learn more. And if you haven't picked up the book, Unlock the Power to Heal with Ty Bollinger and me, please do. And say thanks to my good buddy, not a doc, Chris Barr. He's been a great inspiration in getting us this information, and I want to get it to you. 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, right here on the Robert Scott Bell Show. Check it out, robertscottbell.com. No more type 2 diabetes.
The Robert Scott Bell Show.